So I know cedar is a go-to bow drill fire making wood, but I haven't seen a cedar tree since we've been out here. So I'm going to try to find some birch. I've heard that can also work well. Paper birch. And hopefully I can use paper birch to make that container I was talking about earlier as well. So depending on what you know about tracking, it's pretty clear that the deer ran through here. You can tell from all the disturbed things, the leaves. It's kind of hard to make out on the camera. Lifted up tufts. Two little things in there from the hooves. Probably more than one deer. So brings me to the three things, I guess, because I haven't talked about food since I've been out here. Rule of threes. You can go 3 minutes without air. Thankfully, that's not a problem right now. You can go 3 hours without shelter. If you're like in a blizzard or like really cold or really, really hot environment with no water, the sun could kill you in 3 hours if you're overexerting yourself. 3 days without water. Some people can go a lot longer, but I mean, it depends on the level of physical activity. If you're trying to like hike out of somewhere, yeah, about 3 days without water. And 3 weeks or so without food. Most of the time people think, when they think of Lost in the Woods, they think about finding food first. And that's because we have to plan our meals in our society. But water and beverages are always available and we don't have to take special breaks to drink water. But water is really priority number one. If you're lost like this, personally, I wouldn't think about food, really, for like the first 24 hours, unless something that's food like really presents itself to you, like you see a plant or some edible berries or something, then go for it. But I don't know. I want to get fire and water and shelter before I start talking about setting traps or anything like that, because you can go much longer than you think without food. And water is really the priority. Try to get water within the first 24 hours. And then you'll be kind of hungry, but you'll still be okay mentally to get food. If you're not used to it, you might have a little bit of a headache. It's annoying, but it's not going to be debilitating like water has the potential to be, depending on your exertion level and the environment and your overall physical fitness. So right now, we're trying to get fire so that we can get water that's clean. Now, if I spent 3 days out here, 2-3 days, I'm getting really thirsty and I still didn't have fire, I would try to find the cleanest source of water I could and I'd drink it, because it's better to risk it than it is to like get to that really, really bad point of dehydration. Like if you're not going to be able to get fire, if you don't have those skills and you can't get fire, maybe it's rained and I can't make a bow drill fire in the rain because I'm not that skilled. After like 2-3 days, then yeah, try to find your cleanest source of water, drink it. Or if it's raining, then boom, collect the rainwater. That's going to be clean. There you go. But if it's not raining and you just can't get a fire going, maybe you're injured, maybe you don't have a knife at all, maybe you don't know anything about primitive fire making, then it's better to drink the water than it is to die of thirst, risk getting sick. But hopefully it doesn't come to that. Hopefully I can make a fire within the first 24 hours, have some purified drinking water. So I'm just gathering some of the light, fluffy pieces of paper birch to use in my fire bundle once I get a spindle going. Just putting it right in my pocket. I mean, if you're lost in the woods, you don't have to worry about keeping your pants clean for work. So trying to show you this one-handed, very carefully, almost skinning piece of birch bark. Oh, crap. So hopefully I can get a single piece big enough without any holes. This might work. It'll leak a little bit, but it should work. Okay, so a couple things. I found what should work is a spindle, paper birch, very dry, only dry thing of paper birch I can find that's not rotted to hell. One, if you can't tell if it's wet or dry, maybe your hands are really cold. If you touch your lips to it, your lips are very sensitive. They have a lot of nerve endings in them. They're and you can sense moisture with them better than with your hands. I might try to make the baseboard out of that piece. I might also try to use this. I'm going to link the kind of tree this is. I'm not sure off the top of my head. But yeah, it's mostly hemlock out here. I've spent a while hunting around, and yeah, so hopefully that will do. I'm going to test it out, see what kind of progress I make. Also, that piece I cut to make the container has a hole in it. If this was a real survival situation, what I would do is, this tree's alive, so it's much less apt to have holes in it because it's not rotting away, it's not dead, it's on the ground. So I would kill this tree, and I would slice it down, score it, and peel off a whole big section of bark. And somewhere there'd be a piece big enough to make a container without any holes. But this isn't a real survival situation. There's not that many birch trees out here. I don't want to just kill this birch tree for the hell of it. So I'm going to demonstrate the technique on this, and hopefully those little holes, it doesn't leak too badly, and it will still work out for me. Something I forgot to mention, especially if you're not used to being in the wilderness a lot, and even if you are, I mean, you're going to be afraid, you're going to be in a very different area than normal. If you're truly lost for whatever reason put you in that situation, you always want to look at your back trail, because the one side of the trees and the landscape will look different from the other side. So when, I was walking away to get the stuff, always looking back as well as forward, so that you remember what the back trail looks like, because when you come back, everything can look very unfamiliar sometimes. I'm lucky enough, I've been following, if you can see, it's a little bit of a deer trail, so that's how I'm going to find my way back. But you want to be careful. If you really don't know how to navigate well, or if you're in really thick bush, you can cut 4 blazes. So every time, you'll score small trees so that you can see under the bark, and they're white, and that'll be really easy to see. And you do that in 4 lines going in 4 directions away from your camp. That way you can just walk off from them, and if you get lost, you just need to find one, and then you follow it back to your camp. It makes finding your camp, it creates a much bigger target than your little shelter, which is essentially a camouflage shelter because it's covered in leaves. So what you do is you just take your knife, and it's easier on smaller trees, and you just do that on both sides, and from far away you'll be able to see that if you're looking for it. You don't have to do that, but if it's a really disorientated environment, that can be one way. So again, the camps. This is your camp. You cut blazes off this way, off this way, off this way, and off this way. And then if you want to look for shelter material over here, then okay, walk over here, and then instead of trying to walk right back to the camp, you can walk over here, hit that blaze, and then go that way, because the camp is a small target. But when you put those long lines going off the camp, then you make a much bigger target. Unfortunately, we have finished recording with the cell phone because we need to buy more GoPro batteries. So this should hopefully be my spindle. I don't have a fire bundle yet because I want to test these materials and see how well they work before I go through the effort of gathering all that tinder. So right now what I'm doing, since I don't have a big knife or an axe or a saw, I'm scoring the branch all the way around. Just have to get through the bark and a little bit into the wood, like so. And then when you break it, it'll break right there where you want it to, and it won't splinter out too much. Now this might be our water collection device later, but I'm going to use it to collect all the shavings for now from this, because we'll use this for our tinder bundle, and I don't want it to impact the string. I'm going to shave all that off. And then I don't have any string with me, but I do have shoes. Most people wear shoes, and most people have shoelaces. So if you're ever in a true survival situation, you want to keep in mind like everything you have on you, your belt, what your belt made out of. If you have a thick leather belt and you really need cordage, you could cut it into strips. I mean, obviously, I'm going to use my shoelace and I'm going to put it back on my shoe. I wouldn't use my shoelace to like tie something for my shelter, because then, yeah, I'd rather have shoes than a foot of string. But to hold the spindle for the bow should work just fine. So I'm including all of these sped up clips of me attempting the a bow to make a fire via the bow drill fire making method. I'm not really including any of my explanations as to how to do it because I failed in my attempt. The forest that I was in, the trees were predominantly hemlock. It was very difficult to find wood to make my setup from after I spent so much time working on the shelter. In retrospect, I would say instead of spending 3 hours or so attempting to get the wood that wasn't so good to work because I really wanted to get fire before nightfall, it would have been better to spend 2, maybe even the whole 3 hours really searching to find the perfect setup. And then even if I didn't make fire that night, at the very least I could probably test out the setup a little bit. And then in the morning, I could continue trying again with the setup that would be better, because I would have taken more time to find wood that was really the best wood that I could find. So I think part of my problem was I got a little bit impatient and I wanted to try to make fire that night because I was kind of thirsty. You know, I usually drink a lot of water, not used to going that long without water. It's different when, you know, you're hanging out with your friends or you're just trying to do it and you just had like a sandwich and you got your water bottle, and it's easier to realize that the prep is more important when having the fire isn't necessary for securing water to drink, you know. But I was thirsty. I'd gone about 8 hours from my last drink of water, and I was kind of hungry. I usually eat a lot of food, drink a lot of water. And I was looking towards the prospect of sleeping on the ground, and I really wanted to get fire going. It would be a big morale boost. I could get some clean water to drink, you know, but I got a little impatient. I think it was predominantly because the circumstances that were more, I guess the circumstances were more distracting than if you're just going out and trying to experiment with that one method. I was trying to prioritize different survival goals, and I knew I needed fire to have water, and I was really thirsty, and I knew that my body needed water, so I really wanted to secure water. I skimped a little bit on the prep stage when, as I said before, I should have really spent maybe 2 or 3 hours to get that perfect setup for the perfect drill and fireboard, and then I would know that even if I didn't have time to get everything good that night, then the next day, then I would be able to light a fire using that method the next day. I should have just been more patient is what it boils down to. I didn't follow my own advice. I kind of rushed around a little bit too much. Even though I spent like a good 50 minutes to secure those materials, since the forest was predominantly hemlock, I should have taken more time to really search out good, dry, not punky, not dead materials to make my bow drill setup out of, so that I could be sure that with enough effort it would work. Wood that I had found to work, it probably would have made more sense to spend the first few hours really finding good materials to make my bow drill setup with. But I'm not an expert in primitive skills. I've only made fire with a bow drill a few times before. I think my issue this time might have been that my spindle was too soft. I think the aspen for the base was probably not a good choice because the birch seemed to work better
And I don't think using the birch as the spindle was smart because I ended up wearing all the way through one birch spindle and I needed to make another. And I think if I used a harder wood on the birch baseboard, that I would have been able to get fire. I was getting a lot of dust, but for the life of me, I just couldn't get it to form into an ember. I got several large dust piles, but couldn't create an ember. I'm deciding to include this, and I'm including this in the video because I want to show like the realities of it. I feel a lot of the people that are out there are kind of like me, where this sort of, it's like a hobby. They practice these skills. Hopefully, you never have to use them, but it's fun to try them out. Um, but we sort of get lulled into this false sense of security because we see this stuff on TV and they just do it every time on, there's many shows out there. I'm not going to list the names of them off. Or you see people that are experts do it every time. But if you're in a limited geographical area, or it just rained, or you don't have that much time, like my big issue was I was pressed for time. If I had all day, I'm sure I could have found a good maple spindle, and I would have I would have had a much better chance of success. But I had to travel very far to find the dead wood that wasn't hemlock. The forest was a lot of hemlock in the forest. Also, I believe that the very tight grain of the birch base, because it was where two branches intersected, that creates a very tight grain, made it so the wood was a little bit harder. So using birch on birch didn't work as well as it could have. The reason I didn't select a different piece of birch is because all the other ones were very rotted or wet, so that was the only thing that I could find in that pile, from that fallen tree that I had to work with. So again, the limited time and space and all of the hemlock just kind of compounded to make it rather difficult. So, unfortunately, kept tweaking the system. I tried two different kinds of material. I used birch for both the spindle and the base. I used birch for both the spindle and the baseboard for one setup, and then for the other setup, I tried to use birch and a mystery wood that may be aspen. I'll put the link for what kind of wood that was up there once I Google it later. So this shows the realism of it. I have a little bit of experience with this method, and I have extensive experience with other fire making methods. Like if I have like a fire steel or a ferrocerium rod, I can just like make a fire really quick, and a lot of people can't do that. So this shows how just because you see on TV like Survivor Man or like Bear Grylls, they make fire with sticks, if you will, real fast. It doesn't mean it's feasible for someone who hasn't had any training in the art, because wood selection is huge. If you're doing it with the wrong kind of wood, you could have a power drill and you'll get smoke all day, but you'll never get an ember that you can work with. So if you don't have the correct kind of materials and you don't know what kind of materials you need, it can be completely hopeless. So I think this is a good lesson in realism. I'm definitely going to practice this fire making method more, learn more about different materials in different parts of the world. Relacing my shoe, going to put my shoes back on. I'm going to beef up the shelter for the rest of the night. As I said before, there's water down there. I found water down there. I had known there's water down there. This is a very swampy area. There's water everywhere. Down there's a river. It's not clean though. You need to boil it or use a filter. I don't have a filter. I just have a knife. So hopefully tomorrow, if this was a multi-day ordeal, I would be able to create fire eventually and then boil the water. But if I got to like day 2 or 3 and I was getting kind of loopy and I hadn't had any water, then I would just drink the water. If I still hadn't had fire or way to purify the water up until that point, I just filter it to the best of my ability, with whatever materials I had on hand, and then drink it, because it's better to drink water that may be bad than it is to let yourself dehydrate and die intentionally because you're afraid of the water. That all being said, I can't demonstrate it right now, but tomorrow when it dews, I'm going to show how to collect moisture off of the leaves of all these plants. Hopefully we can get a little bit
of drinkable water that will hold us over for tomorrow, well, we would attempt the fire method again. But yeah, so, I mean, it's not fun to try something for like an hour and a half and then fail, but it's a learning experience. I'm kind of glad it happened. In a way, it shows that material selection really is key to the bow drill method, and it really illustrates why having a wooden fire on top of this knife is like paramount when it comes to emergency preparedness supplies. Because if I had fire right now, I could be drinking all the water. Well, I'd need to make a container, which I'm going to demonstrate. But if I had like just a fire steel or something, I could be drinking all the water I wanted to from that river. But I can't because it's dirty.
Ready?
Okay, so I folded it like that, and like a stick. So I split. Let's show you again. So again, we use that scoring method. Snap it off, split it. Split isn't centered. Like that. I'll split it all the way. Split it the rest of the way on the birch. And then this is kind of like prehistoric clothespin. Not a prehistoric, but like a primitive clothespin. So it's pinched. I go down like that. And now, as I stated earlier, if I got this piece off of a live tree, it hopefully wouldn't have any holes in it. If it has a few holes, what I would do is I would take a pine tree, like that tree right there, and I'd gouge it with my knife until sap would run out. Then I'd collect the sap, and I'd take some cold coals from the fire, like black coals with the ash, and I'd mash up the ash into a powder. And I'd mix that equal parts with the pine pitch. And that creates a very good glue. And I'd use that to coat the seams and anywhere where there's a hole. And yeah, this is gonna leak a little bit, but the river is right down there. I'm gonna fill this up with water. I'll have these sticks, a stick that'll go across the middle to hold it, or I can just hold it in my hand, and then I'll bring it up and it'll be full of water, and then I'll heat up small golf ball sized hot rocks in the fire, not from the river, because that can be dangerous. They can explode because there's moisture trapped inside. The rocks that I got, not from the river, that are small, heat them up, pick them up with wood, then put them inside here, well, there's water in here, and do that until the water gets brought up to a boil. Yes, there's going to be ash in here from the rocks. Yes, there's going to be dirt, but bringing the water to a boiling point, it's going to make it so there's going to be water with dirt in it, but it's going to kill all the bacteria, so it's safer than drinking the river water. Is it going to taste good? No. Are you going to get horribly sick? No. And again, so equal parts charcoal ground up into a powder, you just mush it up with your fingers, pine pitch. Be careful getting that stuff on your knife though, it's really sticky. I like to cut it with the knife and then use a stick to collect it. And you use that to seal the holes, it's waterproof. They used to use it to make canoes out of this stuff. Kind of like this, but really big. So now what I'm just doing, I know before I said you want to fill the shelter with leaves. I'm going to fill it with these boughs because I don't think it's going to be that cold tonight. And I'd rather sleep on boughs than a million spiders. Leaves are the expedient thing to do, especially if you don't have a cutting implement. But this is partially just for fun, to see what it's like and, you know, see what it's like to spend 24 hours in the woods with just a knife. Like, I couldn't get the fire going. Now I don't have any water. Part of the experience. It's type 2 fun, that's what they call it. You have fun after when you look back on it. But anyway, I'm using these just because I don't want to sleep with a million creepy crawlies. These aren't quite as warm, but they smell great, and they're not covered in spiders. You want to show them inside, babe? I just started. When you weave the bed, you want to put the pointy part on the end towards the bottom. So I'm going to go collect a bunch of those. So just using this light from Bella for lighting purposes. If at any time during the night I need to see something, I'm not going to use it. It's still dusk though. You can still see with the human eye. I'm just using this so we can see what's going on here. So bedding's pretty sparse. Could have put more leaves on, but I spent about 2 hours trying to make fire by friction. Did not succeed. I'm pretty tired. Gonna go to sleep, try to collect some moisture off the leaves tomorrow. So this is just kind of showing how survival isn't always about like glamour and stuff and like doing the cool thing and catching fish and all that crap. Lighting the fire real fast. You know, right now the smartest thing for me to do is to relax, conserve my energy for tomorrow. Tomorrow I'm gonna try to get some fresh water from dew and just stay warm tonight. Okay, traveling philosopher's out, right, babe?
Right.
She's smart over there with her setup.
Unfortunately, the next morning, both cameras had died. I've since purchased extra batteries for my GoPro, so we shouldn't have that happen again. But essentially, I just got up and I gathered dew from the leaves and I squeezed it out of my bandana. I didn't really have a container to squeeze it in, so I just squeezed it into my mouth. The makeshift birch bark container would have been too big to collect this small amount of water, so I just kind of sucked on the bandana. And I attempted the bow drill just one last time. It failed. I think it was an issue with material selection, as I discussed before. But anyway, this was a great learning experience. I can't wait to try my hand at bushcraft in Colombia, is where we're going to. I'm really excited to learn primitive skills from the indigenous people of the Amazonian basin as well. I think that'll be a very eye-opening experience. So if you liked what you saw and you want to see more, like and subscribe and share the video and give me any feedback that you guys have as well. Thanks. Traveling Philosophers out.